Good afternoon. Today I'm bringing you another edition of Brainstorm with Epilepsy South Africa and Dr. Kate Health Coaching. Today we have Marina Clarke joining us, who has been the National Director of Epilepsy South Africa for nearly 20 years and is now a disability activist. Marina has been working on something called the IGAP, which is very exciting for people with epilepsy. Many people believe that 70% of people with epilepsy could be seizure-free if they were properly diagnosed and treated. And IGAP is helping to improve awareness, treatment, and research into epilepsy and other neurological conditions. So, Marina, you're the fundi on IGAP. So if you can explain in more detail exactly what IGAP is and how you got involved in this, please.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's a great pleasure to be here. The story around IGAP actually goes back as far as the mid-80s, when we had the global campaign against epilepsy internationally, and several events have happened since then. But the landmark event came in 2015, when the World Health Organization adopted a resolution. And if you want to go check it out, it's WHA resolution 68.20. So you can go Google that. But what it really did is it focused on the burden of epilepsy globally. And it was quite significant because it was one of the first times that a civil society organization achieved a resolution of the World Health Assembly. And that is an assembly of all the UN countries in the world. So while we then had a document that said, this is the global burden of epilepsy, what happens thereafter? And it took another few years until 2021, when we had the next resolution, which was 73.10. Again, if you want to go Google it. But what that really said is, it's not good enough just to know this. We need a plan. We need to do something about this. And that resolution called on the Secretariat of the World Health Organization to develop a global action plan, an intersectoral global action plan. And that's where the word IGAP comes from, intersectoral global action plan. So there was a process of consultation with a number of organizations globally, and eventually a draft plan was put to the executive board of the World Health Organization. They approved the plan, and it then went to the 75th World Health Assembly. And the World Health Assembly, if you're not familiar with it, is where countries that belong to the United Nations get together to discuss world health issues. So that came together. South Africa was represented, as always, by our Department of Health, and this resolution was passed and the IGAP adopted. Now, the interesting thing that happened after the first resolution is that we looked at it and said, neurological conditions. So the two things that happened is that it actually got to action with a global plan. And secondly, it broadened it to include other neurological conditions, things like muscular dystrophy and stroke and Parkinson's and autism. Any of the neurological conditions suddenly got covered by this. And this was only adopted in May of this year. So it's fairly new. And the work we're doing at the moment that you kindly refer to as exciting work, and yes, it is, was the fact that we can now domesticate this. Often with international instruments like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities or this IGAP, it seems so far removed from people's day-to-day life that many people are not even aware that it exists. So what we're doing now is to create awareness around it so that people understand what is contained in this, what is happening in South Africa. And we're very lucky that we're one of 4 pilot project countries in Africa to domesticate this. It's South Africa, Kenya, Eswatini, previously known as Swaziland, and Mauritius. So we've been working for, about 2 years now on this process, and we're now really at the hard end where we're putting a national plan together. So in short, that's what the IGAP is all about.
Thank you, Marina. Lovely summary there. When it was initially just with epilepsy and now combines other neurological conditions, what are the advantages of combining other neurological conditions there?
I think that, when that decision was taken to incorporate other neurological conditions, it was a little bit of a two-edged sword. Because on the one hand, it would give us a broader appeal and thus broader support because it included other conditions. The risk, of course, is that epilepsy will disappear into this broader category of neurological conditions. But I think what's really important is that neurological conditions per se has been a very big stepchild of the disability sector and even in the healthcare sector, where it didn't get the attention that some other disability categories got. And it's largely because it's an invisible disability. I could have epilepsy, nobody would know until I actually have a seizure, or I told somebody about it. Whereas if you see somebody in a wheelchair, they've got a physical disability. If somebody is using a white cane, it's clear that they're blind, or people who use sign language are probably deaf. But neurological conditions are what we call invisible or hidden disabilities. They're not obvious until an episode occurs or somebody discloses it. And a lot of people are very nervous to disclose it. So, I think it gave us a broader appeal, broader support. But you'll see that the IGAP, for example, it's the Intersectoral Global Action Plan on Epilepsy and other neurological conditions. So epilepsy is still very much in the forefront. And it's internationally, it's a combined activity of the International Bureau for Epilepsy, or IBE, that is really the psychosocial kind of worldwide organization, and then the International League Against Epilepsy, or the ILAE, and that is the medical side of things, the neurologists and neurosurgeons and the medical people. So we bring both of those together because epilepsy cuts across your entire life. It's not only about, take your medication and you'll be fine. It's also lifestyle management and a holistic approach to it. So it is a really important kind of development.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a health coach who works with people with epilepsy and having struggled with epilepsy myself, lifestyle is so incredibly important. And one of the statistics that I refer to so often is that 90% of people who say that they manage their stress have noticed how their seizures come down. So 100% taking your medication is so important, but it is lifestyle factors. And I know one of the things that's really important within IGAP is best practices to help develop health policies that are cost effective, sustainable and affordable. So what kind of things? CBD was something that was mentioned in there, but what other things are we looking at?
Yeah, I think what I want to, let me explain it this way. When we received the IGAP, and anybody who'd like to read it, we'll have a copy on our website available, epilepsy.org.za. Alternatively, get in touch with your local branch of epilepsy or contact us through our toll-free number 0860 epilepsy, and we'll make a copy available. You can read it. But what we looked at is there's 5 strategic objectives, and they're very broad. And we said, okay, let's look at South Africa. What is it that we need in this country? Let's narrow this down to what really would make a difference for us in South Africa. And we did this in June, July this year through a survey, an online survey that we conducted. And we asked people with epilepsy and organizations working with people with neurological conditions, what is your take? What do you think here? And from that, we identified what the key issues were. And from that, we've identified 4 strategic objectives, and education and awareness is one of those things. So getting the voice out, having people heard. What are the issues that you are dealing with as a person with epilepsy? Because, you know, somebody who has a job has a different experience to somebody who's living on a disability grant. Somebody in a rural area is having a different experience to somebody in an urban area. You know, there's an old joke in our field that says, if you want a disability that's really focused on the individual and his or her experience, epilepsy is the one for you. Because people, even with the same diagnosis, will experience things in a different way. So it really is important to look at what are we going to do from here on. We've developed these strategic objectives, very simple things. We're focusing on access to healthcare, because that is the first step. You need access to proper diagnosis, to proper treatment plans, the various options. You know, you referred to CBD, but what about things like VNS therapy, for example? There's so many options available. What about alternative medicines? You refer to stress relief. A lot of people have had great results by simply taking up yoga, for example. Watching your diet. What are the triggers in your diet? Do I need to stay away from chocolate, terrible as that might be? Do I need to stay away from caffeine? How much sleep should I be getting? You know, all those kind of things that we need to look at. So access to healthcare really important. And by that, we mean diagnosis, treatment, and then particularly the ability to interact, to bring all that medication, because we've had a lot of complaints in the past few years about, you know, clinics running out of specific medication or inaccessibility of that. So we'll be addressing that. That's a really important thing. And then the other 2 areas that we're looking at is access to social protection and social services. You know, for a very long time, and even now, people with epilepsy and other neurological conditions struggle to get a disability grant because it doesn't look like a disability. You know, you're functioning normally, you have a job, you drive your car. What do you want with this? So that's one of the things we're looking at. And then obviously access to social services. In other words, for people to be able to deal with things like alternative healthcare. How does it affect my family? You know, if I have epilepsy, how does it affect my children? Can I have a baby? How will I take care of my baby? Those kind of things. The real life experiences. So those are some of the issues that we're really looking at. And we're approaching all of this very much from a disability rights point of view. So the work of the organization has always been grounded in the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, but this is specifically focused around that. We're also looking at the Sustainable Development Goals and how that interacts with this IGAP. So it really is quite a broad spectrum approach. IGAP is a 10-year plan. And we've now reached the stage where we are going back to our target audience, people with and affected by epilepsy and other neurological conditions, and say to them, tell your story. We want to hear from you firsthand. What is the most important thing you need to deal with? Is it, you know, if you look at Maslow's theory, is it I need a roof over my head and food in my stomach, and I can only get that through a disability grant? Or is it, I'd like to be in a relationship with somebody. I'd like to get married and have children. I'd like to have a fulfilled life. You know, where is it and what is more important? So to achieve that, we will be doing a series of what we've termed consultative workshops. We're working together with IBE Africa, as well as the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. And these workshops will take place in January, February of next year, 2023. So that we can actually meet people on the ground. We've got 10 workshops planned. There'll be at least 1 in each province. And in the Western Cape, we'll have 2, 1 in Cape Town and 1 in Knysna, where we'll actually invite people and say, come and talk to us. Tell us what is that you want us to do. And that information will then go into the national plan as what we've termed the implementation matrix or the action plan, that says, these are the things we need to do in the next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, so that it's a clear plan. That national plan will then be submitted to Cabinet for their approval. And once Cabinet approves, it'll go to Parliament for ratification. So it will become a formal action of government and civil society jointly.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. So how do people get involved or find out the dates for those workshops?
Okay, we are in the process of finalizing dates. We already have the dates finalized for NISNA, which will take place on the 17th of September. Oh, sorry, September, listen to me, January. I'm still stuck in this year. And then followed in that same week with a workshop in Cape Town. We'll then be going later in January to Parys in the Free State and to Potchefstroom in the Northwest. Workshops in Limpopo will be in Polokwane and in Dahlstrom in Mpumalanga. In KZN, we're finalizing, looks like Durban, but it might be Pietermaritzburg, but looks like Durban, closer to UK. And then in the Eastern Cape, we'll be in East London and in Kimberley in the Northern Cape. So literally in every province, there'll be a workshop. The easiest way to confirm the dates is either by looking at our website, because that will be advertised on our website. And that is, for those wanting to write it down, www.epilepsy.org.za. Or you can contact Epilepsy on our toll-free number, which will connect you to your nearest branch, and that's 0860 Epilepsy. Or alternatively, listen to your local community radio. We'll also be doing interviews on community radio, publishing in local newspapers and so on. But really the easiest way is get in touch with your local branch of Epilepsy South Africa, chat to the people there. You know, over and above these workshops, it's also a really good place to meet other people, to get connected with people. And for those fortunate enough who can, to plow back, whether it is financially or with their time or connections or making things happen, there's always that opportunity as well. So it's a really good place to connect as well. But that would be the easiest way. The workshops will be, let's call it a half-day workshop. We're starting at 10 in the morning and we'll finish at around 3. So it makes it easier for people who's not close to those immediate areas to travel there the morning, participate in the workshop, and then travel home in the afternoon. So it shouldn't be an expensive activity to participate. And of course, it's free of charge. And we'll give you lunch on top of it.
And Marina, if people can't make it on that day in the area, is there a way that they can, is it going to be recorded so they can still participate and give their input?
Absolutely. We're well aware of the fact, you know, South Africa is such a large country that it's almost impossible and way too expensive to get to every small place we'd like to get to. We're also aware of the fact that a lot of people are employed, they have jobs, so you know they can't just go to a workshop on a Tuesday because it's really interesting, but we would like to hear those voices. So again, via our website, we will be making information available, making recordings available, but we will also be saying to people, here's some of the questions, let us hear what you say, and people can electronically then submit their views so that they can participate. We're trying to cast our net as wide as possible within the realities of available resources. You know, there's only so many people and so much money in the kitty. So we really are trying to cast as far as we can.
Yeah, because I think, you know, you raised an interesting point there saying getting social support as well and having that network is really important. I know certainly I've chatted to a lot of families where the children come to me saying how difficult it is looking after a parent with epilepsy. And so for them to be able to speak to other children can be so helpful. For a partner of someone with epilepsy, the stress and strain that they go through can be incredibly difficult, take a lot of strain on a relationship. Driving, whether people can continue driving or whether they end up losing their license, and then the pressure on the family, what impact that has. And so not only is it the condition, but it's the impact that it has on everybody. And like you said in the beginning, even though you had the same diagnosis, it affects everybody so completely differently, and therefore how you manage it. Definitely.
I'll never forget some years ago when I was still employed at Epilepsy South Africa, I had a young teenage girl, she was about 14, 15 years old, who sat crying in my office one day and said to me, "I wish my brother would just die." And then was horrified because she said, and I said to her, "Why?" And she said, "Because everywhere I go, I'm always frightened he's going to have a seizure and spoil everything." And that's the realities often faced, particularly by young people and teenagers who, being a teenager in itself is not an easy situation. And then to have that kind of additional pressure is even worse. With parents, we often find that, a mother will say, "Well, did I do something during my pregnancy and that's why my child now has epilepsy? Or did I do something wrong? Did I allow that child to participate in a sport and now look what it's caused?" So there's often a lot of guilt. And in our organization and in the field, we speak often about people with and affected by. And by that, we're referring to the families, the friends, the economic impact of it, because often the medication is expensive, the treatment is expensive. But then you also have to start looking at things like somebody in the family is the primary caregiver, often the mother. And that means mom can't go out to work. That has a financial impact on the family. So maybe another sibling suddenly can't participate in a sport or activity that they'd like to, because all the money is going into treatment for the child with epilepsy. So there's a lot of issues around that. And family therapy is often a very important thing. And just having a platform, as you say, where you can actually speak about these things, really important. So in addition to people with epilepsy and other neurological conditions attending our consultative workshops, we're also inviting their families, their friends, their carers, the people in their immediate community. Come and talk to us. Tell us what the issues are. One of the themes that we're focusing on is support for carers, because that's often really neglected. It's tough being involved with somebody who has a chronic condition. You always have that slight fear about what's going to happen, how bad is the next seizure going to be, and just taking care of that person all the time. People talk about respite care, which is really just an opportunity for a person with a chronic condition to be placed for a day, a weekend, a week, whatever it is, with a facility that can provide the care and give the family almost like vacation time. It often becomes so. In addition to people themselves, please bring along your family, bring along your carers, your next door neighbor, your friend at school, whoever it is. Let's hear from them as well.
Wonderful. I think, and one more point is the stigma that's attached so often, because of the lack of understanding. You see someone passed out on the floor if it's a tonic-clonic or something like that, and you wonder what's happened. Like, your suspicion is raised about, have they been taking drugs? Have they passed out from alcohol? Like, all sorts of things go through one's mind, and automatically there is maybe a stigma attached when applying for a job. Do I tell them? Don't I? Am I going to be rejected because of this? And absolutely, in theory, you shouldn't be rejected, but you never know if it's because of that and what impact it's going to have on your work.
Suddenly the position gets filled.
Yes, absolutely. And how one's confidence is impacted because of the anxiety that, what if I have a seizure? How is this going to impact everything? So yes, it's about the condition and then all the other things that come with it as well. So I think the work that you are doing, driving this internationally on this project and as a disability ambassador, is absolutely fantastic. And thank you from the bottom of our hearts, as somebody with epilepsy And as somebody also trying to help people with epilepsy, thank you so much for your time, not just now, but in everything that you're doing. We really, really appreciate you and your work.
Very much for the kind words, Kate, but I can tell you the honor is mine. I've been a disability activist, being a person with a disability myself. I have 2 daughters, both with disabilities. And it's always been a case of stand up, be counted, say what you want, say what you need, but very often very difficult for people to do. So my last words I want to say is to everybody who's watching this, make a plan, come join us at the consultative workshop, make your voice be heard, change the things you can. You know, it was Gandhi who said, be the change that you want to see in the world. And that really is the call to action. Be the change that you want to see.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marina.
Thank you so much.